But you spent a lot of time in Washington too, right?
Washington, Colorado, all over the world actually.
Really?
Yeah. As a kid, I grew up all around the world.
Oh, great. That's good.
I was a kid without roots for a long time.
Well, it gives you a good background.
It certainly was interesting, and it does give you a pretty interesting perspective about life and cultures. And I mean, heck, I was never in a school longer than a day.
Welcome very, very, very much to Conversation. I'm pleased to welcome to the program Paul Fitzpatrick, and Mr. Fitzpatrick is the president of a new and emerging entity called the Talk Channel here in the United States. And Paul Fitzpatrick, welcome very, very much to Conversation.
Thank you very much, Earl. It's good to be here.
I wonder if you might. We want to talk about this this phenomenon of the Talk Channel itself, but I wonder maybe a good place to begin that is your own background, if you would, please. You know, give us your own background. You were involved. You have been involved, if I could tick off a couple, with Titsch Publications, and you know Brian Lamb, and you were involved with Weather Channel and things. But I do share us your own background.
All right. Well, I don't want to. This probably be pretty quick. It's not all that interesting, but I do know Brian. I don't know if he wants to acknowledge that he knows me. As we were just talking before we went on the air, as a kid, I kind of grew up all around the world. My father was in the Foreign Service, and so we lived in a variety of places. And it's really interesting how I landed up here. We were talking earlier about serendipity. There was a little bit of that going on. I thought I was going to follow his footsteps, my father's footsteps.
A lot of challenge there.
Well, I got my undergraduate degree at Holy Cross, and I worked in Washington, in the Senate and the House. Ended up working in the executive office of the president back in the early 70s. And I was, frankly, I was going to graduate school at Georgetown in Latin American Studies.
Latin American, I was going to ask.
And I landed up getting a job at the Office of Telecommunications Policy, and got very interested in telecommunications. And so I took a left-hand turn in the road.
Right.
And so people say, what's telecommunications? Well, today I guess the best way of saying it is cable, telephone, satellites, broadcast, all those kinds of electronic media. So as fate would have it, that's the career path I landed up getting in. And I've been involved in publishing and cable television networks, and have been involved in running a couple of cable television networks. But frankly, I had a dream back in the late 80s about a 24-hour, all-talk-based cable network. And so that's the road I've been on over the last several years.
Right, yeah, you've been looking at that. I congratulate you on the launch. It just happened in October here of 1994.
Thanks.
Because you've been pursuing that, and it's a tough road to hoe sometimes. We had a Gulf War intervene and other economic all kinds of difficulties that make it hard.
You have done your research.
Well, yes, and I mean, no, it's difficult. It's difficult to get something like that going. And is it more difficult now? Less so? Is it? I mean, it seems to me. I would think that you have an opportune time now. The internet is just going. There's other kinds of reasons, but it seems a particularly opportune time. Does it seem that way to you?
Well, you know,
try and get it going some years ago. If you could have
asking me that question, I'll give you one answer. If you were to ask somebody else the same question, they might give you another answer, and this is the reason why. In 1988, several of us had this dream. And as you just mentioned, we thought that we were going to be able to create this all-talk network, and literally we had our deal done in 1990. 1990, as we all may remember, was a horrible year economically. You did have the Gulf War, you had the recession occurring, and also you had what was then called an attempt to re-regulate the cable business.
Right.
And as a result of all these variety of things occurring, channel capacity, which is the space on cable systems which distribute cable programming, was pretty much non-existent. And the ability of the cable operator to go out and expand channel capacity was pretty much dried up because financing had been dried up, there was great uncertainty about regulation, and the economy had gone into the tank. And so the effort was put on hold. Today, the same kinds of issues, except for a bad economy. The economy today, comparatively, is a whole lot better now than it was then. But you've had government intervention, you've had government attempt and, in fact, re-regulation of the cable business, which has caused considerable uncertainty about how new programming services are going to be rolled out, created great uncertainty about capital lending to the cable markets. The only difference between now and then is that you knew there was going to be a resolution now, as opposed to several years ago. And the result is that capacity is being expanded, not overnight. So the opportunity for new cable networks to come online is better today than it was in 1989 and 1990. So by comparison, today is better than it was 3 or 4 years ago. For someone who is starting up and trying to launch a new cable service today, coming into this environment for the first time, they would think that it was the end of the world. And comparatively speaking, I suppose that's true.
Yeah. Well, there's more channel capacity, you say, now than there was?
There's the
promise. Has anything to do with compression or anything of the new
there's the promise.
Because I don't know how many, are there more, is there more transponder space, and there's more technological capability to distribute signal and that sort of thing? And we hear talk, I mean, in the general press or the general media, 500 channel universe is coming, this superhighway, and that sort of thing. You've been working right in the trenches, as sure. You'd know what's really going on. And what is the reality? How much transponder space do we have? What are the realities as far as that's concerned?
Well, the realities is that there's a lot of promise and, in fact, actual expansion of capacity. The problem, however, is that for the last 2 years, ever since the Cable Act of 1992 was passed, and then subsequently the Federal Communications Commission has issued a number of rules and regulations relating to how the cable business can move forward. They've been in excess of 1,500 to 1,600 pages.
Good Lord.
Fine print about how a cable system can run their business. But there was a lot of interpretation, a lot of uncertainty about what all of this has meant. Now that I think most of this is behind us, not all, there's a lot of clarification, and as a result, cable systems are starting to expand channel capacity. What is uncertain, however, still uncertain, is how the cable operators are going to be able to market and package and price cable services, new programming services, as well as existing programming services. Whether or not existing programming services can reside in what are called tiers or groupings of services that are regulated by the government, and whether or not they will exist on other tiers or other groups of services that are not regulated, and how much they can charge, how much they can't charge.
Cable industry took a big hit just recently, didn't they? I mean, in the last couple of years with the ruling of it was a tremendous.
All a result of these 1,500 to 1,600 pages of rules. There have been about $3 billion of revenues sucked out of the cable business as a result of rules and regulations.
A B with a B. I mean, billion with a B. A big B. Yeah, that's a lot.
A big B.
Right, I understand.
Real money.
Yeah, right.
I think Everett Dirksen, a senator from Illinois, and
God bless.
minority leader, probably would be delighted to see what's happened to the Republicans today. I think he said a million here and a million there, or was it $1 billion?
I'm not sure, but it finally
here or there, and it finally is money.
Yeah, right.
No, $1 billion.
They don't hardly make them like Ev Dirksen anymore. I don't know. Maybe they do. I guess they do. Yeah.
I think someone would say that someone down in the center from North Carolina might be a character. But yes, $3 billion of roughly of revenues, and of course roughly about half of that in cash flow was taken out of the business. Now, the cable business has to grow, has to expand, and one of the ways it will do it is through offering new services. The new services are new programming services such as ours, new services such as telephony, new services such as online services, a variety of ways of bringing new services to the consumer to meet the consumer's needs and wants. Determining what the consumer's needs and wants are, of course, is another matter. And that's why I think that there is a little bit of continued uncertainty about what, in fact, is ultimately going to go down these new expanded pipelines.
Yeah, right. And the pipelines being laid. Fiber optics is coming.
Fiber optics, compression, all of these kinds of things.
Compression is a big thing in that.
Sure.
And just talk about the superhighway. And you said before, all of these things of telecommunications. One of the interesting things is the communications capability. Traditionally, you have telephony, and then when cable came and so forth, we had these communications. But then you had these tremendous developments within computers and information systems.
Absolutely.
And they're blending now increasingly. Right. It's more and more difficult to see the distinction between where the computing begins and the telecommuting starts. And it's overall, do you understand what I'm saying? Isn't it increasingly the case? I don't know if we're ever going to get to what Henry Geller talks about, telecomputing. I suppose you've read that, you know. And
well, I think what's happening is that as these technologies have come online, and as the veil, if you will, has been lifted off of the cable industry in terms of these new rules and regulations, there has been a lot of discussion over the last 12 to 18 months about this superhighway.
Yeah.
This information superhighway that you just mentioned. Directionally, that's where television and computers and all the kinds of things that you just mentioned, Harold, that's where it's going. But like everything else, there's a dream and there's a vision, but it takes a while to get there.
Sure.
You can't climb Mount Everest unless you do some training, unless you get used to the elevation. You can't suddenly arrive at 500 so-called channels without your first channel and without your 100th channel. And you can't do a lot of these things unless you know what the playing field is going to look like, until you know how you're going to price and package and market. And frankly, you're not going to get there with 21st century technology unless you're able to do things well in 1994 and 1995. And the fact of the matter is that most people who subscribe to cable television, who watch broadcast television, are conditioned to watch, if you will, traditional television programming. And so I think the challenge that we as programmers have, and as the cable industry has, is how do we make a logical transition, bridging 40 and 50 years of television habits and programming with these new technologies and new ways of bringing information and entertainment to the consumer.
Well said.
It's going to take a while. So this information superhighway, 500 channels. I don't know if it's a matter of 500 channels. I think in some respects that probably is a disservice. It doesn't describe exactly what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that, like a newspaper, if you take your New York Times Sunday edition, how many hundreds of pages is in that?
I don't know, but it's heavy. It's going to be,
It's probably about 5 pounds. It's probably a lethal weapon, and probably ought to be, the Federal Trade Commission probably ought to look into it for its safety. But the fact of the matter is, how many people go through and read all 500 pages? To use this analogy.
Right.
They might land up reading a page, 2, 20, 50. They'll go to what they want. And that, in effect, is what we're talking about, or people are talking about, when they discuss 500 channels on the superhighway. It's there for the offering. Maybe 1% or 2% of the people are going to deploy all of it, if even that.
We're going to need some sort of index guides by which we're going to be able to do it. It'll be the 500 possibilities, and it'll be one channel, but you're going to fill up a lot of different kinds of possibilities of programming that can come, and there's going to need to be, like I say, index or guides for people to know what there is there available. But again, the lesson perhaps might well be that we don't want to jump too far ahead into Buck Rogers or blue skies thinking and keep ourselves grounded in the reality. And that metaphor is a good one, that we have a technological capability that we have to lay us on with the historically inherited patterns, and that's part of vision. I would submit, just in a general sense, of where the human condition is now. That's a problem that we all have, and cable television is a metaphor for that in a certain sense.
But you know what? To get 4, 5, 6 years down the road, the cable operator and other distributors who are going to be distributing programming services, whether existing or new services, they need to have a bunch of services that are both highly targeted and niche services on the one hand, but also services whose programming format or genre is broad-based. For example, the Talk Channel. Our new channel.
We're here to talk about,
Our new channel is, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that news and talk are pretty compelling formats.
Absolutely.
People read newspapers, they watch television, they watch CNN, they watch CBS Evening News, they listen to talk radio stations. Did you know that the typical viewing day in a typical television household in this country spends 40% of that time, on average 7 hours a day, watching television? 40% of that time is spent watching news and talk.
I'll have to say, I didn't know that. I saw some of the figures that I got from your office.
And you probably found it astounding.
I was amazed. 40% is news and talk, 14% is talk. It's an incredibly high percentage.
It is.
I wouldn't have thought it was that high.
It is amazing when you first think about it, but think about what it is that other than sleep.
Yeah, right.
For some of us. Some of us aren't so lucky, I guess, these days when you're starting up a new business.
Yeah.
But think about what we do day in and day out. We talk.
Yeah, that's right.
We talk about all kinds of things. Now, obviously, if we work, we talk about our job, we talk about the things associated with. But what do we talk about other than what's going on in our family or with our loved ones or with our friends? We talk about things in our neighborhood, things in the world, things that are happening in our country, a variety of things.
Yeah.
We talk about them on the phone. We talk about it in the supermarket. We talk about it at the water cooler at the office. And so what you've got here is an inherent communication among humans called talk.
Right.
The blending of news and talk, which probably explains why talk radio stations in the last 5 or 6 years have grown from a roughly 350 talk radio stations around the country, news talk radio stations.
Right.
Today there's over 1,200.
Really? That fast? I didn't realize. Yeah.
It's astounding. There's several reasons for that. I mean, and I don't know if this is scientific.
You think there's a distinction between radio and talk? Radio's a hot medium, cool. Television's a cool. I mean, the distinction between radio and television.
I think you're going to have to leave that to McLuhan, who might send us a message or his disciple.
Right.
But I think what you've got here are a number of things. One is there is a desire for people to seek an outlet of communication in an increasingly fast-paced world. I think, and this is a bit superficial, maybe, and this is an amateur's viewpoint, but heck,
we're all amateurs here in a certain sense in this world because things are moving so quickly.
I feel pretty comfortable.
Anybody who doesn't think they're an amateur is crazy because they just haven't gone into the other system down the hall, because things are moving quickly, like you say, yeah.
But the more, and Nesbitt touched on this a little bit, high tech, high touch.
Yeah.
The more things become frenetic, the pace increases, the technology tools at our resources, the flip side of that process requires us to seek out a human dimension, a touch, a feel, a need for dialogue. And that comes in all kinds of ways. So talk and news talk is a form of that, in my opinion. That's part of it. I also think that because of what cable has done, which has offered us all kinds of viewing opportunities, and now listening opportunities, and now interactive opportunities.
Yes,
interactive opportunities.
Right.
The process by which we have been delivered news of simply passive news readers sitting at a desk, news written by editors, rewritten by editors, delivered by managing editors to an anchor desk with video footage.
Yes.
Simply a one-way form of communication. Same thing with a newspaper.
Right, exactly.
Assignment desk editors, city desk editors, ultimately landing up on plates, going through a printing press, delivering 1 million copies a day, which I think the New York Times average circulation is about 1.1 million. That's, in essence, for the reader, a passive exercise.
It is actually, yeah. They have no input to it unless they fill out the crossword puzzle.
They have input in the sense of
write a letter to the editor.
Readership studies, tracking trends, so forth and so on. But in terms of an exercise, what you have in the talk show is this dynamic of high tech and high touch, the interpersonal exchange on any number of issues. But what you have in news talk is what I call this democratization of news, where people can, not entirely, but I think more directly have an impact on topics. They, in effect, become assignment editors. They, in effect, are telling experts, guests, their opinions. They're helping to shape opinion. And they are also, by the way, helping to shape the content if, for example, like a 24-hour cable network, such as the Talk Channel, they're helping us determine what we ought to be doing next. Because if anyone is close to the customer, it is going to be a channel whose format is news-based talk programming, because we're constantly listening to what people are saying, what they're responding to out there, and they become part of the process. And so this whole dynamic I think adds another dimension to people's viewing and listening habits.
It certainly does. It certainly does.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes absolute sense to me. It makes absolute sense, and perhaps in a broader metaphor, too, because you can see there's been such a clamor, if that's the right word, or expression of the desire for participation. The last election was participatory democracy is increasingly discussed. They want to have an input. And it probably has something largely to do with the fact that technological development is having implications in terms of the evolution of human affairs. I mean, it's coming in such dimensions now. I think I've read that Homo sapiens first appeared 200,000 years ago. And the distinguishing characteristic between us and others that were still perhaps at the same time as us and so forth that didn't live was language, was the ability to talk. They were talking at the beginning, and that was that language. But there's this sense of participation on the part of the people, and we have these technologies that even back in 1988,
you bet,
when you were first investigating this, weren't really available. We have the internet now. We have these other kinds of interactive capacity for
instant
people to
polling.
Instant polling.
We do on the Talk Channel, which with the channel launched on the 1st of October of this year.
Yeah.
Every day we have two forms of polling. One in the studio audience where the members of the audience are sitting there with keypads. And we'll deal with a topic for an hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
We'll come back, by the way, to that topic later in the day. But they'll sit in that audience and they'll vote.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that scientific? No. Mm-hmm. But it's telling that universe, those 100 or so people, however many are in the audience, what they're thinking and how they're responding to the discussion that is going on at the moment about violence in schools,
right?
The impact of cancer. So forth and so on. So that's one way. The other way, of course, is instant results from viewers calling in on 800 numbers, so that we are instantaneously getting a sense of what the viewers in television households watching the Talk Channel think about the topic being discussed.
And you even on the air, you even use some of the database accessing systems, Prodigy and other things, in order to bring the information right into the program while it's being done. Which is fantastic. That's a real blending of the technology. It's like an information node you've got.
We call this person an information specialist.
Information specialist.
So let's say
that's interesting.
If things go well as a result of this interview, you may find out on the Talk Channel.
Yeah.
Let's say you're a host on our 12 o'clock segment.
Yeah.
Right. So and you've got 3 guests, and you got an expert in Los Angeles and another in Washington, and you're discussing topic X. And there are 5 different opinions that have just been stated, each of them representing to be fact.
Right, this happens a lot. Now,
the last time I checked, none of us are walking encyclopedias.
Right.
Some of us think we are. But so what do? So you call over to this information specialist sitting at all these databases. Susan, do us a favor. See if, in fact, what Jack Jones over here, the superintendent of schools in the Cleveland school system, said about literacy among 8th graders across the country.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 goes in.
It's there.
Goes into it. Now, maybe it might take a minute, might take 5 minutes, might take an hour.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. What matters is that there's a process occurring. That it is
a very important process.
I think it is. I think it's pretty interesting.
It's like an information node, because you can be discussing any kind of subject matter, and you can get the best mind, and also you can tap into databases, increasingly are there.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that's what's really going on in terms of understanding.
But all of this is additive. Fundamentally, going back to what I said a little while ago, the fundamentals in 1994, in terms of the television viewing experience, is that there's a television in the household. People want to be informed, and they want to be entertained. They want to be informed in an entertaining way.
All right.
But they also want to watch traditional television.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the basics of talk on television still, frankly, is the telephone, are people talking. These other things, as I say, are additive, and they're evolving.
Right.
We are really at the most elementary or rudimentary stages of the so-called information superhighway.
Yeah.
It may be interesting that we've got these databases, and it may be interesting we have the online services. They're terrific. But I bet you when we look back 5, 10, 15 years to what we think is an exciting new era in news and talk programming in 1994, we're going to look like we're going to look like pictures in the 1920s.
Things are moving so quickly.
Exponentially.
Yeah, it is exponential.
Which is a big word, I guess.
Yeah,
Maybe I
it's
shouldn't use it.
almost as big as epistemology. But in both of these terms, the exponential epistemological development of what's going on. Gregorian, who was the head of the library, says the information available to us doubles every 5 years in an exponential pattern. All the charts are going up. And it's some sort of a qualitative new change that all of this extended consciousness that technology is affecting upon the human condition. And some people are very upset with information overload.
Absolutely.
And there are, angst and problems within the psyche of people all over and people are looking to understand and trying to understand. And you're being able to be like a node where you can bring together the best information and even check back and then involve interactivity. That's a very, very important function.
But you know what?
Nothing could be more important.
But in the final analysis, there has to be a relationship that develops between the listener and the viewer when it comes to the radio medium or the television medium. Mm-hmm. And you can have all these gizmos, all these gimmicks. You can have pretty interesting programming. The content can be the most interesting. But there has to be a relationship of some kind because in the end, a comfort level begins to develop about what is coming out of that box, that television set. Mm-hmm. And if there isn't, then all these gimmicks don't mean anything. I mean...
That's right. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. They've got...
People either relate to Oprah or they don't.
Yeah, right.
Obviously they do. She's an enormous success.
Right.
We could have information specialists all over the place, but if people don't fundamentally have some kind of bonding experience with what is called the talk channel, but most importantly, our hosts, if they don't find our guests interesting, if they don't find the topic interesting, boom, they're gone.
Yeah.
Why are they going to go? It isn't like 1960, where there were 3 television choices.
Right.
ABC, NBC, and CBS. There's going to be 50, 60, 100 plus choices. There are going to be 200 choices. And not only are there going to be discrete choices, there are going to be subsets of that.
Right, exactly.
And there's listening choices. How many radio stations are there in New York?
That's right.
50 plus.
That's right.
How many specialized trade magazines are there in the country? 11,300.
Wow.
11,300 magazines.
That's a lot of vying for attention, right?
That's exactly right.
Exactly right.
So
the indexing of what's available there, and
the challenge is enormous.
Is really going to be. We're going to want to put a grid on the reality so people will get what it is that they want. But it's educational in the best sense of the word, because these news things are news breaking. Sometimes some things are entertaining news, some things are hard news, some things are breaking, but in a certain sense, they do have content behind them. Trade policy has economic content.
Sure.
There's economic, academic content behind it. So it's an educational process in a very real, full sense.
But you got to entertain.
You've got to make it so that people are going to be able to be attracted to it.
Otherwise, they're going to be gone.
Well, it's good that it's that way.
Well, I hope so.
Listen, we have a tape. We want to show them. So show people because it's really good. You started up this in October 1, right, of 1995?
Actually, we had 2 stages of launch.
Right.
Not to get overly intricate in all this, but we launched, if you will, a mini version of the channel last July.
Right.
Onto TCI. Telecommunications, Inc.
Yes.
Which is the largest cable operator. They have a service called the TV network, and this TV network is offering a 24-hour cable network that has a number of new programming services, and they want to showcase these new programming services to cable subscribers on their systems, showing them what new services are coming down the line.
Or might come down the line, possibly.
Or might come down the line.
Yeah, sort of like a showcase. Yeah,
exactly.
Preview channel that you had,
or services, by the way, that have launched in the last several years.
I see.
And aren't in as many homes, for example, as CNN is.
Good idea.
For example,
good idea. Yeah.
Disney's on it.
Right.
Learning Channel is on it.
Right.
And then, of course, services such as ours.
So they can get a feedback from the people what they want to see.
That's exactly right.
Right, and they put you on there.
We're on there. They launched that thing on the 15th of July. We launched with them on the 15th of July.
But you came out at the bottom.
We came out at the bottom, and we're pleading for help.
No.
Please call your cable operator right now for carriage of the talk channel.
No.
We launched the full channel on the 1st of October.
Right.
So that's a 24-hour channel now.
Right.
Distributed around the country.
Yeah, right.
Slowly but surely. It takes a while because there's not much capacity at the moment.
No, but I mean, you launched it there, and people were in very, very great enthusiasm for that.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Oh, we think so. I'll tell you, the days that when our programming is on there,
Yeah.
the volume of calls and other forms of communication with us, email, voting, so
Right.
forth and so on, is significant.
Right.
So we know they're watching us.
Right.
We know they're interested. We know they're participating.
Right.
And it's our sense that they like it.
All right, good. Well enough. Listen, we got a tape. We got this demonstration tape. Let's show it. Right? We get it runs about 8 minutes. Set that up. Then we come back and talk some more about this. Right? We're talking with Paul Fitzpatrick, president of the Talk Channel, which is a new cable system.
When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about that name.
Absolutely.
I tell you.
From Multimedia Entertainment, the producers of highly successful news and talk programming, comes an innovative news talk channel. Presenting the Talk Channel, the best in news-based talk television. The Talk Channel. It's relevant, timely, topical, interactive, in touch, and friendly. It's the 24-hour channel where you get the talk behind the news. The place where the opinions and concerns of your subscribers are as important as the news stories that drew them there.
I actually do agree with this man on one point. I have a comment to say about these films.
And I think a lot of these things that happen to these women.
Television viewers across the country have already demonstrated that the Talk Channel is what they are looking for. 9 out of 10 television viewers said they would watch the Talk Channel. Why? Because talk and news are the most popular viewed television categories. 40% of all television viewing is devoted to news and talk. Talk is second only to news in viewing, beating movies, sitcoms, and sports. In fact, 3 out of 4 households watch an average 1 hour of talk programming every weekday. The Talk Channel is rated #1 by women and appeals to the fastest growing demographic segments. News and talk have particular appeal to adults 35 plus. The Talk Channel is rooted in television's long and successful history of talk, but it's been designed for television's future. It is highly interactive, involving audience participation, both at home and in the studio.
Do you believe that a rapist can be rehabilitated? 1 would be yes, 2 would be no. Okay, you just vote, and when we have the results, Bob, we put it up on the screen.
68% think that you can't rehabilitate the rapist.
Throughout the show, we have been asking our viewers what they think. Are you in favor of homeschooling? Here's what you said. 73% said yes, they are favoring homeschooling, and 27% said no. Very interesting.
The Talk Channel's hosts are recognized experts in news talk. Ernie Anastas, one of television's best-known and respected newsmen. Denise Richardson, a popular correspondent from Good Morning America. Patrick Halpin from Public Broadcasting's talk show, Face Off. Dick Wolfsey, a popular talk host for over 15 years. And there's more top-flight talent to come. Each of the Talk Channel segments features the expertise of an information specialist. Linked with major databases, CD-ROMs, and other multimedia, the information specialist can answer questions, check facts, and interact with the hosts, callers, audiences, and guests. These are just a few of the Talk Channel's groundbreaking techniques.
I'm on the internet here, and this is a posting that came up. I thought what we might do is respond on the bulletin board, and we can be part of the superhighway, as they say.
Joe, do you have some information there that might help us out, sir, on past views of this issue?
There was a Supreme Court decision. It's Richmond Newspapers, Inc. versus Virginia.
The Talk Channel gives serious subjects the time they need. No issue is bound to a 5-minute, half-hour, or 1-hour time slot. Viewers know they can turn to the Talk Channel when they're looking for the most substantive and personally relevant treatment of important issues and how those issues impact their lives. Let's watch a few minutes of the Talk Channel's programming and see how they treat headline news in this unique format.
It is a theory from 2 men that got the whole nation talking. It is the cover story of just about every major magazine in America this week. And it has sparked a heated discussion on race in America. Are blacks intellectually inferior to whites? And if so, is it because that they are born that way, or is it caused by their environment? Well, in this new book, the bell curve, scientist Charles Murray says that blacks are born with a gene that makes them intellectually inferior to whites. Professor Michael Levin from the City University of New York says that the bell curve is right on target.
What do you get out of carrying on this insidious and horrible idea and philosophy that blacks are inferior?
I am glad,
are you trying to keep us down?
I am glad to answer that question. For the last 30 years, all the differences between the races, all the ills that blacks are heir to, have been explained in terms of white misdeeds for which whites are said to owe blacks compensation. The best defense, and I speak out of a right to defend myself and my children and my family, we are innocent of charges, we do not owe compensation, we do not owe damages.
Our information specialist, Bob Bowden, has pulled up a couple of the sample IQ questions, and we want to ask our studio audience to respond. Now, you all have your keypad, right? And folks at home, in fact, you can play along here, and you can give us a call and react to what we're doing. Here's the studio audience IQ test. The little boy cried blank, he had cut his knee. All right? Do you answer 1, although, because, unless, before, until? Everybody vote on that? All right, let's see what we have for results, Bob.
84% said number 2, which is the correct answer. We have a very bright bunch here.
Subjects like this one are so much at the top of viewers' minds. The Talk Channel continues to explore them throughout the day with fresh perspectives, new guests, calls, and other interactivity.
Earlier today, Ernie Anastas spoke with a man who says these theories are absolutely nonsense and the bell curve book is dangerous.
The Talk Channel. News Talk. That counts.
I was wondering, so what I was asking you before, it's very good tape, you know.
Well, thanks.
It's very interesting. I know that Levine makes it very interesting. It's controversial, and people would be very interested in that. But it's also, you know, a thing that people would want to have feedback on, right? I mean, that particular piece.
I think the subject by definition is going to invite feedback. I think it makes for. Certainly the topic is interesting. The key is how are we doing it?
Right, right.
What's the execution? What makes the viewer stay with us? And what makes them stay with us is the fact that you've got interesting guests, you've got meaningful, prolonged discussion. It isn't 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And if the story is so compelling, we'll come back to it later in the day. For example, what you just saw on that tape, we did that segment at midday.
That thing with Professor Levine? Yeah.
And then we come back to it later on in the afternoon. Same topic, but now you have new guests, new experts, new call-ins.
Really? That's interesting. That's interesting.
Well, you see, what you've got is, here's a topic, and there's lots of others just like it, that have many aspects to it.
Right.
That is so at top of mind because we're news-based.
Yes.
And I want to come back to this news-based thing in a second, is that people will want to discuss a number of aspects of an issue throughout the course of the day. Well, there are certain aspects of a story that are more appropriately, what we call in the television business, more appropriately day-parted. Meaning, we'll deal with a subject like school violence or the bell curve or what have you, and what we'll emphasize in terms of topic at noon or at midday might be a little different than what we do later on in the afternoon or in prime time.
Yeah, or even you're on 24 hours a day.
We're on 24 hours a day.
Yeah, whether you have something at 3 o'clock in the morning is going to be...
That's right.
Yeah,
but it could be the same general topic, but now we're dealing with, you know, we dealt with 3 aspects of the story earlier in the day. Now we're dealing with 2 new aspects in prime time. Different hosts, new experts, so forth and so on.
Right.
It's just like reading a newspaper article.
It's an ongoing seminar or a symposium or something of that sort.
But not just a bunch of talking heads.
Yeah, not just a bunch of heads.
Entertaining, studio audience, interactivity.
Room for some serendipitous humor in some cases when it's appropriate, and things that'll break it up and things that'll make it human for people. Right,
absolutely.
Because you don't want to be deadly in terms of presenting the information because people have had enough of that already.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Multimedia.
It's a great name, incidentally, isn't it, for this era?
It is a great name.
The multimedia era.
Multimedia is the company that owns the Talk Channel.
Yes.
It produces Donahue.
Yes.
Sally. Rush Limbaugh. Jerry Springer. and a number of others. It also operates television stations around the country. Its television stations garner the highest news ratings of any television stations anywhere in the country.
Is that in fact local news, right?
Local news.
Yeah, right.
Local
That's
news.
interesting, right? Mm-hmm.
The reason why I bring this up
Yeah.
is because it has to do with making this talk programming, talk-based programming,
Yes.
news-based programming, entertaining.
Right.
So it isn't just a matter of sitting around and having a bunch of talking heads.
Yes, right, exactly.
With-
Or a monologue, somebody talking at you like
Right.
that. Again, the fact that you're in an era where the interactivity is becoming, I don't want to use an overworked term, user-friendly or media-friendly or something of that sort. It's
Absolutely.
easier all the time. The internet is up and going, and there's Prodigy and these other systems, and you can begin to feed that back in. So, like, again, I don't know, it's like a node of information gathering, and how do you select what you're going to be talking about? Is it the same editorial process like anywhere else, you know?
Essentially it. There are great debates that go on in the programming department, appropriately so.
Yes.
If the programming department wasn't having intense discussions and
They're
debates
not doing
about...
their job, right?
They wouldn't be. And so every single day, I mean, people say, well, what on earth can you talk about? First of all, let me just emphasize something.
Lord.
We are news talk.
Yes.
This is not another talk show.
Right.
This is not another relationship show.
Okay.
Fine for those kinds of shows.
Right.
That's not what we are.
Yeah.
What we are is news talk.
Right.
Like radio. Long programming blocks. Topics driven by the news events of the day.
Right.
So if you pick up USA Today, or the New York Times, or the Daily News, or the New York Post, Newsday,
Right.
I don't leave out any important constituents here.
Get them all. You got how many?
There's a variety of stories.
Yeah.
There's a variety of stories on the front page
Right. And right.
of those papers,
Right.
on the second page of the second section, of Section C, of the Metro section.
Right. Right.
All kinds of stories
I know it's
to pick and choose from. That's why there are debates in the programming department.
Exactly.
And because we're a cable network that is distributed across the country, we don't depend solely on the papers in New York.
Do you feel
that
like-
would be the biggest mistake.
Right.
We look at CNN in terms of what they're talking about. We look at the Chicago Tribune, the Denver Post, the
Financial
Los Angeles
Times in London. Yeah.
That's a little too
esoteric. Maybe.
too esoteric.
Right. Do you
Too much for me.
Yeah, I understand. Well, from wherever you want to get a sense of the pulse beat of the planet or the pulse beat of the country. You're national, but you're tied into the international thing.
But also what's relevant to people's lives,
Yeah, right.
day in and day out.
Exactly. Right.
Not just interest rates
Because you are right.
or Fed policy.
Yeah, right.
But how are kids going to public schools being protected against violence?
All right.
Things that matter to people.
Yes, right.
Day in and day out.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Because it impacts their lives.
Yes, that's right. Or they feel that they know that it impacts.
It's relevant.
Do you feel any obligation to set the tone to break a story, or you don't feel that now? Is it more investigative? It's more editorial. It's more in depth. It's more. You have in a certain. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you don't have to
that's a great
break a
question.
story so much as other news centers. Action news has to be there 5 minutes before it happens.
We are not CNN.
You don't feel that, right?
We're not CNN.
No.
We're not CBS.
No, but
we're not NBC.
those are sister institutions that
They're sister institutions,
educate the public. Yeah.
but they're in the news business.
Right.
We're in the news talk business.
Right.
We're
Editorial,
providing an
sure.
outlet for people to discuss the news that have been brought to them by CNN or the Times or the Post or what have you.
Right.
We are. I don't mean to suggest if we knew something, found out something before anyone else did, would we break it?
Sure.
Well, for sure.
But it's not
that's
your
not
mission.
our charter.
Right, exactly right.
Our mission is to provide an outlet for people to have in-depth, relevant conversations, dialogue, feedback about the news events of the day. We're not in the business of gathering or disseminating news per se.
Right.
We are in the business of providing people the opportunity to get off their chest, off their minds, out of their hearts, out of their emotions, an outlet.
And also to be able to, in a certain sense, be able to go back behind the event and to bring it up, like you said before, you could go to other experts and to bring the story into a fuller, more truthful context of what the reality is.
I don't know if it's truthful, but it's multidimensional.
It is multidimensional.
Because ultimately, as we said
you
before,
draw upon other authorities and that sort of
absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
And ultimately, who's the final authority in our context? It's the viewer.
Right.
The viewer ultimately is the arbiter of what it is that we're doing, whether or not it's important, interesting, relevant, what have you. and they can participate in this process.
Right.
And this all goes back to what we were talking before about this need to this high-tech, high-touch that we discussed, and also this opportunity for people to be, if you will, managing editors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And assignment editors and writers, and to be able to ping off.
Yeah, there's a tremendous sense, you're aware, there's a tremendous sense. It just came out in the last election, it came out in the election before, it comes out in all kinds of opinion and focus polls and that sort of thing. There seems to be a tremendous sense of just sort of a free-floating anxiety and angst about the condition in which we find ourselves. We had words like a jobless recovery, we had problems, economic problems, there's been downsizing, there's been all kinds of problems. There's that kind of, and there's a thing generally, the word vision, or that there's some sort of a vision, some sort of a sense of what's going on, and the people feel a sense of a little bit at loose ends about how trying to understand that. In a sense, the talk channel, do you say, is that the way we say, the talk channel?
We say the talk channel, today's news, today's talk.
That's good.
That's where we are.
I was saying, do we stress the? A talk.
Stress news talk.
News talk. The news talk. All right.
It's news talk.
Right.
But but it is the talk channel, because what we're saying is this is the place to go for this kind of programming.
Well, it seems to me, what I was sort of groping for myself was that this is the sort of place where exactly what that anxiety or those sensitivities that those people express in such large dimension into the political process and the political institution, this is exactly a place, a forum. I don't know if it's like Athena, the forum at ancient Athena or something, but it's a place where people can begin to participate and get good information and have a chance to feed back into that.
Absolutely.
It's exactly what it would seem the body politic or the body voice populi or something is in a certain sense calling for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's got to be.
I can't see how.
But it has to be good theater.
All right.
And that's what I think television programming has to be. It has to be interesting.
Yeah,
It has to be entertaining.
And has to connect, as you say, with a significant part of the audience.
Absolutely. And if we're not doing that, we're missing the mark.
Yeah.
Or if we're missing it slightly, we've got to work on it. We've got to improve on it.
Yeah.
But it is that. It is a place for people to hear what the people who are making news, the people who are observers of events, are saying. And to hear what the country is saying about any given number of subjects that we cover.
And what the nuances of a fully understood. It's like there's a term. You said John Nesbitt and others. There's these other people. There is a term in cybernetics where they say information overload. You're in the system and you get information overload, and when you're doubling the amount of information that's coming out every 5 years, that just gets to be almost out of hand at a certain point. But in cybernetics, they have a language where they say information overload permits pattern recognition at a level, at a higher level than that, which your systems analysis allows for pattern recognition between various systems. You've been overwhelmed within a system, but you begin to see it in terms of a broader system, and you get understanding of events in a system's way. I can't help thinking that perhaps that's what it is we're trying to do. We're at a period where we have this, maybe just to be philosophical for a moment. We said before, Homo sapiens sapien first appeared 200,000 years ago. And we reach a point somewhere within the lifetime of your and my children. You're younger, I mean, they may be younger, but where the destructive capability is so incredible, where with bacteriological and hydrogen capabilities and so forth, that they can apparently, the scientific community, this would be one which you could run on your thing. Do we have the ability that if there's a miscalculation to render the habitat incapable of the continuation of our species? Couldn't do it in the Second War, couldn't do it in Korea War. But we crossed a line, some sort of a Promethean line of technology, and then there's all this liberating technology that is coming. And again, it's not only the information, it's all these synergistically seen or surprising new technological and developments that are coming, and they're coming just daily out of all of the various aspects of the of the of the various research laboratories and things that are developing, and people become, in a certain sense, overwhelmed. And what they're really looking for, I would think, are patterns between these overwhelming events that can begin to get a sense of what's really going on.
Well, let me ask you something. Based upon what you're saying, do you think that people find some kind of resource center in the talk channel, in the news talk?
Yes, it seems to me like, no, it just seems to me like as you see your mission, or as you see your, what you're doing there. And
I hope so.
It all has to, and of course it all has to be done within a realistic context in terms of, the business realities. You have to be up and going and everything. But what I see is you're like an information era, you're like an information node and a gathering point and a consolidating point to put out information and understandings of the broader realities of which we're a part.
But you know what?
And that's what people are looking for.
But people have to find us. They have to find us, and they have to know what we stand for. We have to brand ourselves, and they have to clearly understand in an image or two, or in 5 words or less, what it is that we're all about. And because, as I say, if there's hundreds and hundreds of channels, viewing opportunities out there, and all these other outlets for information, entertainment, so forth and so on, it becomes a very, very compelling and highly competitive marketing challenge to be able to break through and to have people find in our channel a place for that kind of process that you just described.
Well, yeah, it is, and whether what you call it the news channel, that sort of thing. It is news talk, new insight. There's news insight. I mean, there's different kinds of things that can be done, but the challenge, in an abstract sense, is there. And in terms of the communications and the technologies that are there, you're blending them together here in an era when it is it's just becoming possible for these things to emerge. And it seems to me that's what people, increasing numbers of people, are really in a sense looking for. They may not know for it. I don't want to say vision. Do you feel you don't have that? Do you feel totally neutral in terms of the events in the world, or do you think it's your duty or your responsibility to ever have an overriding, let's say instead an overriding vision of your own, not? Or is it better to?
In other words, is this intended to be the National Review?
No,
the New Republic?
I think that's the wrong. No, I don't mean that.
Or are you saying that the view is that we want people to find in our channel a home for opinion?
Well, Mr. Bush derided the vision thing. At a certain point, or other people will, or we said before, the people are looking for some sort of an understanding, a comprehensive understanding of what's going on, with which,
as I recall,
it's an educational thing,
or
it's, I don't know, I'm sort of grasping here. I'm not sure
I mean,
whether or not.
You have to have a vision. Obviously we have a vision. We have a vision that this is going to be a place that will be a center of opinion.
Right.
Not our opinion.
Right.
People's opinion.
Right. Yeah, okay.
To be expressed in a variety of ways.
Right.
That's our vision.
Right.
But it has no philosophical viewpoint.
No direction.
It's not anchored to any. We're not out to change the world.
No.
In terms of a philosophical point of view, we are out to say, here's a channel that people can come to and listen to and have an in-depth opportunity for discussion about the top events of the day.
Right.
Be it breast cancer, Federal Reserve interest policy, the Haitian policy, violence in schools.
GATT.
But in a way that, what does it mean to me?
Right, exactly. Right.
I mean, we could sit around and have a discussion about policy issues.
That's what I was trying to say.
All day long.
Right. No, you don't want that. Right.
We're looking for a way to make this relevant to people's lives, so that we aren't reading page 434, section B, paragraph 2A of the GATT policy.
Well, that's what I was.
And whether or not that particular 20-line sentence with 3 commas and 2 semicolons makes any sense to people's mind.
Right. Yeah, no, I understand.
Then they're going to be gone.
I think that's what I was trying to say when I said you're trying to get a pattern recognition between subsystems. You can't, if you burrow in depth into each of the systems, you're gone into boredom land, because I mean, there's in any system, any specialization.
I'll be with them.
A kind of comprehensive overview or an understanding which can incorporate the findings of other systems, representing and respecting them and so forth, but respecting the nuances that there are within specialized treatments of things, or nuanced or directional
well, who knows? Who knows? Howard Stern had a dialogue with someone the other day.
Yeah, right. We need something, and News Channel sounds like a lot of work.
But remember Howard Stern the other day?
Yeah, I don't see him very regular, but okay.
On his radio show, there was someone about to commit suicide.
No, I didn't. What happened? I missed it. I'm sorry. What?
Well, someone was going to commit suicide, and he was able to talk this person out of it.
Good.
So, I mean, maybe we might be able to provide something as meaningful as that.
Yeah.
And I don't say that tongue-in-cheek.
No.
I say that that's a particularly relevant activity that in that instance he, as a talk host, did.
Right.
I hope that we can be as meaningful to an individual's life watching the talk channel.
Right.
I hope that we can be as compelling in terms of our impact on both an individual and in terms of society's information needs.
Well, that's what I was saying in a certain sense. If you begin to bring those things, and you're talking about news in depth, you're bringing that to greater numbers of people, involving people, getting the good information, and doing it in a way where they can relate to it and begin to have good information emerge. It does have a cybernetic has a steersman purpose or something. It begins at, that's not the principle, that's not your reason, but that's the resultant in a certain sense of being able to address the sense that there is among the broader citizenry, and the broader citizenry at all levels of some of the people most responsible for historically inherited institutions, the general society and others, are looking for some sort of answers that are there, that out of the mix of this whole blending of the news and really thinking of it, there are some answers that can come that are relevant to answering human purpose and what's it all about, Alfie, and the human dialogue. And we're at a time when they're looking for new possibilities that could sort of just maybe synergistically come out of what it is that this information that you're putting together.
Absolutely.
In a sense, that would have a, in that sense, it really has an important place in terms of the national organization.
Well, but all we are is what we hope will be one additional meaningful outlet for news talk.
Right.
And that if we can emerge as a place where people, as they go through the dial with their remotes, they'll know that we're there, they can come in, they can find what's on at that moment. If it's relevant to them at that moment, they'll stay with us. If it isn't interesting to them at that moment because they're not interested in the topic, they'll move on. They'll move on to the next channel. But having arrived at our channel slot, wherever that may be on Manhattan Cable or Paragon, they will know that if they come back an hour later or 2 hours later, they've got a pretty terrific place to get news and information in the form of news talk.
Yes, right. And you want to keep a consistency of standard over whatever it is you're talking about. That's important.
Absolutely.
And it's also just say that whatever time, increasingly there's going to be these indexes so that people, and there's going to be new digital systems for program, people will be able to program their digital video systems to get something that's even going at 3 o'clock in the morning is relevant, as they begin to look ahead and they get.
Well, that's another topic, maybe for another day.
For another day, but I mean, these things are moving, and it's going to come faster than we know because the technology seems to.
We know that talk radio is a tremendous companion, and talk shows are a tremendous companion for people late at night, and perhaps we might emerge as that as well.
All right, well, listen, all I can do is wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much.
With the best
Appreciate
background.
it.
Not at all. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Your pleasure.
Enjoyed it.
I enjoyed very much talking with you, and it's been your pleasure. Paul Fitzpatrick is president of this exciting new cable television development nationally here in the United States, the Talk Channel. And happy to bring you those perceptions. We invite you to tune in. We'll come back again next week. That's it for now once again. Paul,
Thank you very much, Harold. Good to be here.
See you next time.